So this is Jen, the Liberty Lion, and today I want to talk about a couple of things in situ and your situation, your location, and just some interesting tidbits of information. This is the American Dictionary, which I will show you the cover of here in a moment. And lately I've been talking about situation, state, status, and other like phrases and terms. So this is the American Dictionary. And here in Latin, in situ, which lex situs means the law of the locality or law of the land. And that's lex situs is Latin. And here we have in situ, or in a situation, meaning here in this dictionary in its first location. And down here in Latin, we have in statu quo, in the original state. I've also been explaining to you that the original states are the free, sovereign, and independent states mentioned in the Articles of Confederation, and confederation means with a federation. And the Constitution is the expansion of the federal portion of the Confederation. And the Constitution allowed for the creation of dependent states within the independent states. So you're in statu quo, in the original state would be the independent state because it was created first. However, directly after birth, they have your parents create a birth certificate for you, or they fill out an application so that the state can create a birth certificate for you, placing you within its location, which is under federal control, because the state birth certificates are under federal control. So in the original state, there's also this idea, according to the Sumerians, something called am-agi. I saw this symbol in a book I was reading once, and I wondered what it was. And it took me a long time to figure out what this meant because there weren't any words surrounding it, and it was just a symbol. But then I come to find out that it's am-agi, a Sumerian word, which means freedom. It has been translated as freedom, as well as manumission. Manumission was a word that I first saw in, I believe it was Justinian's code, which was an early Roman code written by the men appointed by Emperor Justinian. And manumission means to be set free. So as you may know, the Romans often sent their military into villages and conquered the villages so that they could bring more people into the city. And those people were not allowed to be citizens. They were kept as slaves, at least for a period of time. And once they showed that they would be good citizens, they were not given full rights as citizens, meaning they couldn't run for public office, but they were given most other rights. And they were, once free, they were called manumitted. So set free is manumission. Exemption from debts or obligations and the restoration of persons and property to their original status, including the remission of debts. Other interpretations include a reversion to a previous state. So a reversion to a previous state, and release from debt, slavery, taxation, or punishment. The word originates from the noun ama, mother, sometimes with the enclitic dative case marker AR, and the present
participle gi, return, restore, put back, thus literally meaning return to mother, or your mother country, as some might say. Return to your roots. Assyriologist Samuel Noah Kramer has identified it as the first known written reference to the concept of freedom, referring to its literal meaning, return to the mother. He wrote in 1963 that we still do not know why this figure of speech came to be used for freedom. Well, I think it's self-explanatory. The earliest known usage of the word was in reforms of Ur-U-Kangina by the third dynasty of Ur. It was used as a legal term for the manumission of individuals. So to be released from slavery, or to even, I guess, maybe be released from debt, to be released from the burden of taxation. I also read in a book somewhere that I think it was Caesar would give out public lands to poor people so that they could raise crops on the lands. Instead of buying the lands, he would tax them. And the taxes were at a fairly low rate, and it was just a portion of whatever they yielded from their crop, and the rest they got to keep in order to buy things that the family needed and build a home and so on and so forth. So to be released from the tax, maybe released from the burden of taxing for a year or for one yield or from then forth. In other words, that they had maybe worked the land long enough that they could have ownership of it. And the crops that they took as their portion of the yield, the government took as portion of their yield, would be used to feed the army, which would then go out and capture more villagers and bring them into the city and make them slaves and bring them in under the control of the government, which is something that we should really become familiar with, because by all accounts, as far as I can tell, is exactly what the United States has been doing through the birth certificate. It's basically capturing the baby as soon as it's born, giving it a legal name, placing it into a jurisdiction under the control of the federal government or its instrumentalities, and making it property of the government. A number of libertarian organizations have adopted the cuneiform glyph as a symbol, claiming it is the earliest known written appearance of the word freedom. It is used as a logo by the Instituto Político para la Libertad of Peru, the Economic School, Georgia, libertarian publishing firm Liberty Fund, and was the name and logo of the Journal of the London School of Economics Hayek Society. The book I found was a really, really old book, so this symbol was adopted long before the libertarians came into existence, and I guess they adopted it based on its meaning. If you watch The Walking Dead, you'll see that Maggie, whose name is Maggie Green, is sort of like the mother, and she runs a small community, and she likes to stay close to freedom, the ideas of freedom. And even though some of her people in her community leave for the Commonwealth because they feel like it's just easier there, she chooses, and many other people choose, to stay close to the ideas of freedom and not accept help from big government, which is in The Walking Dead, the Commonwealth. In one of the last episodes in season 11, I think it's part
2 or 3. I'm not sure where we're at right now on that. She's talking about how the Commonwealth has come and offered them to take over, basically to take over her community and make things easier for everybody else. But in doing so, they would bring these people into a type of slavery position. So they'll be working for the rich people. And if you're familiar with the show, you'll see that Pamela Milton, when she's approached by her secretary or assistant, that perhaps some of the extra funds made from a party that they had could go to provide a scholarship for one of the poor children, the leader, Pamela Milton, turned her nose up at it. And isn't that like what we have today? So Maggie's explaining to a couple of her people how the system works and what happened to her and her father when they were living on the farm. Because before the apocalypse and a little bit after the apocalypse, she lived on a farm with her family. And they stayed close to nature. But she was talking about how the corporations came in and wanted to buy up the farm. And they were buying up land all over the area. And they were making it really hard for her father to say no by offering them all kinds of incentives. And they had even did something with the food and made it hard for them to get food and fuel in order for them to accept the free food that they offered them. Of course, in return, it would come at a price. And isn't that, again, what we're seeing today? And if you're unfamiliar with the show The Walking Dead, it was approximately 10 years ago that the group in The Walking Dead, there's an original group that has been sort of traveling, wandering, trying to find a place to call home. And they decide to go to the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia. I think it was Atlanta anyway. And when they get there, they're let in, but there's a man there named Dr. Edwin Jenner, much like the Dr. Edward Jenner that came up with vaccines. And he let them into the CDC, and the patient one that came down with the disease that was causing people to reanimate after death was called Test Subject 19. And about 10 years later, we come out with COVID-19. And long before The Walking Dead came out, I worked for the DoD, and we were studying how to respond to pandemics and a lot of other things. And so when people come out and say the whole thing has been planned, it may be planned and it may be controlled. But what she's saying is, or what The Walking Dead show is saying, is everything that's going to happen before it happens. And this has been information that's long been available before The Walking Dead came out. So we're talking about 20 years back. And so throughout the series, which is 11 episodes so far, and then it's got several spin-offs, it's basically been telling you what's going to happen before it's happened. It's basically going over some general philosophies. And these are really nothing new because this is stuff that has happened before in the Roman Empire and other historical events captured in, for example, the Bible and various codes and historical documents. So am-agi is to return to mother, but is to return to your original state. And in my opinion, that's the state of nature. And the people in the state of nature created a state for themselves. And that state for themselves was very close to them and very close to nature. It had very, very limited rights and duties. And those states were free, sovereign, and independent. And in Article 2 of the Articles of Confederation states so much, that the states shall remain free, sovereign, and independent. But with the creation of the dependent states and the corporations and making government more into a corporation than a government, came all these other things, such as capturing people and bringing them into the city, if not physically, then by way of papers, such as the birth certificate, licenses, registrations, legal titles, and all these other things, to take them away from their state of nature, take them away from freedom, basically turn them into slaves, capturing them and placing them in the city or in a situation where they are captured and brought into the city, not physically, but by way of paperwork and a legal name. Okay, so you can do your own research on this. It's interesting how things are all connected and how history does in fact repeat itself. And you can watch The Walking Dead. It's on Netflix up until I think season 10. Season 11 is not on Netflix yet. And I'm not condoning people go and download Netflix. But if you want to watch Walking Dead for free, you can watch it on Netflix. I think it may also be on AMC Plus. So here's am-agi, and I told you I would show you the front page of this dictionary in case you wanted to download it. I believe it is on archive.org. I like this dictionary because it's an older encyclopedic dictionary. It's the American Encyclopedic Dictionary, a thoroughly accurate, practical, and exhaustive work of reference to all the words in the English language with a full account of their origin, meaning, pronunciation, and use. And now my computer's gonna slow down, and it's 1895. Okay, so with that, I've given you some interesting information, I think, in this video. And you can like, share, and subscribe. As always, I appreciate all your support. And I will see you in the next video.